what would you say up until this point in time, maybe was your biggest breakthrough with the business AirTulip? And then on the flip side of that, what would you say was your biggest challenge that you had to overcome?
Right. I think the biggest breakthrough was actually pivoting to the headboard and noticing that there's a different market post-COVID. Because initially, the business was always about like, okay, I wanted to help during the COVID era. So it started off that way. And so getting it into a product that would be having a lasting effect was a big thing for me. And I think my biggest challenge is like getting the right people on board and working with the right people. It's really hard. I'm an engineer. I always will be a product guy. I mean, I'm the CEO and I have to do all the different hats. But I have to learn also not only to do the marketing, but also to know who's good at, for example, or customer service or sales. And that's for me the biggest challenge. And I think I'm still working through that. Like, how do you set up a system where people are happy, things are moving, but it's not fluff. It's like go. You need to actually make it work, and there's a mission to it. That's my biggest challenge. It's ongoing. It's not a product. It's like the organization of people.
Welcome to another episode of Everything Intellectual Property. Today, we have a very special guest with us. This gentleman has created the only air purifying headboard that creates a sanctuary around your bed. Please help me welcome the CEO and founder of AirTulip, Arjen de Jong. How's it going?
Hey, how's it going, man? Good to see you.
Pretty good.
Cool.
Man, I appreciate you kind of hopping on and kind of talking through your story here today. Definitely, it's an exciting one. And it seems like I know we were talking offhand a little bit. You're in the lab, so you're actually kind of doing the work as we speak, which is a pretty cool thing. I always typically like to ask the guests here to start if you can kind of describe the product, just so whether or not you're watching this, the audience is watching it on YouTube or a podcast, they have some type of a description of what it is that you've invented or created.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, so I'm definitely in a lab here. I'm in a new lab, which is like a space where a lot of hardware startups and scale-ups are in the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and it's a cool converted space. So what we have, AirTulip is a headboard for bed that creates a bubble of completely clean air where you sleep. What does that mean? It's a controlled environment. So we use the headboard itself to act as sort of a lens to get flow to not mix with the outside flow in the rest of the room, and thereby creating a completely clean air zone coming directly from any filters that we have without any mixing. So as opposed to air purifiers, an air purifier cleans the air, throws it back into the room, mixes around. It's called turbulent mixing. That's all around all the time. And what you breathe is a mixture between, I always think about it, if you have water and wine, you always lay some wine in the water because you're just mixing them both in a bucket and stirring it up. So it's never zero. What we have is like a plug of water, or if you like wine, let's see, for the metaphor, the same thing. It's pure, one of the components, not the other. That's the key thing. And what it does is like it shields you from, allergens in the air that typically are always there when you breathe, outside, inside, everywhere. And now we're down to zero.
No, and again, this is interesting. And one of the questions that I couldn't wait to ask you is, so are air purifiers, because it seems like from what you're saying, air purifiers, kind of we all look at them as, you have your rooms with the air purifiers in there and it's kind of purifying the room. But it seems like you're saying it's kind of mixing the kind of the dust as well as maybe some purified air together and kind of dispersing it back into the room.
Yeah. So what the biggest problem with is like in physics is like we can't see the air, right? So we don't know what's happening with the air and the motion. You can't see the particles in it. Maybe if like you have sunlight coming through, you see the little dust speckles, but there's like many particles that are even much smaller than that. Now in a room, if you think about it, it's like a bunch of sinks and sources. Like say a leaky bucket where stuff comes in and stuff flows out, and the bucket is being stirred all the time. Now, an air purifier, the filter is 99.9 whatever percent clean, but it's only the air that goes through the air purifier that has that. It's get thrown into the room. And now in the room, you got sinks and sources, things that create particles and things that take them away. So if you are ventilating from outside and it's not that dirty outside, it helps clean the room. But if you have a carpet and you walk on it, it picks up dust. Your skin emits dust. Your pet emits dust. The curtains, anything that moves air, deposits particles, takes it away again. So you get this balance. Typically, what we measure and also what's in literature is if you put an air purifier in a room, it will taper off the particles by about 50% after an hour, and then continues to slowly decay till you have a balance of maybe 70%, maybe 80% reduction. But that doesn't mean it's completely clean. Whatever is in there is still there. So yeah, and a room is also not completely clean, completely sealed. If you think you're indoors, it's actually dirtier than outside.
Really?
Typically, about 4 or 5 times dirtier than the outside air.
Wow. Why is that, out of curiosity?
So besides the air that comes in, so your house, if you like, throw your house in a pond, right, it would sink. It's not completely airtight, and it shouldn't be, because you get rid of the CO2 and get oxygen, right?
Sure.
So a house is leaking. Now, besides that, inside, a lot of stuff can stay. So you think about it like dust in the curtains or in the pollen or the carpet, or dust mites in your bed, or
Yep.
if you cook, like the particles that are emitted from all the oils that splatter and cook, if you light candles, all that stays around in the house and only can get washed away by, ventilating it out or air purifying it out. So typically what we see is like you get a build-up. So you can measure with a particle counter. I don't have one here on me. I should have brought it. Like you can measure small and large particles, like outside near a highway, and different places in the world have different levels of pollution. If you're in the middle of Delhi in India, it's horrible. It's actually very unsafe to breathe. If you're like in the mountains and it's not pollen season, it can be quite calm. Not zero, but calm. In New York, I measured the subway is horrible. It's really bad. And you think like, oh, this is a weird smell, but then you measure in the particle count and it goes red and it's alarm, alarm, alarm. I was like, okay, great. So yeah, no, you don't know what it is, but it is, you don't see it. What I mean, like we know what it is, but you don't see it, but you can measure it. And then you can see that indoors, typically, it's a lot higher than outside.
Wow. So then I guess kind of maybe going back to your device with the headboard, what was the moment that inspired this? Because again, we'll talk about obviously the Shark Tank stuff later on and kind of your background. Typically, this is interesting because a lot of times when I have guests on, the thing that they have invented is different from kind of what they're doing in their day job, whether or not somebody is maybe an accountant or maybe is in sales or whatever the case may be, and they invented the product that was kind of completely different from what they're doing in their day job. But again, you have you're an aerospace engineer, so it seems like you've been able to leverage kind of the skills and things like that you learn in your day job or whatever the case may be to kind of invent the headboard. So how did that come about for you to kind of get this idea for the headboard and all of a sudden, to kind of create this bubble when you sleep? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it's like I love it that I can actually apply what I know across different industries, right? So I have been working in automotive. I was at Ferrari and Porsche doing like race car design. I've been at NASA, like, for aircraft wings, building jet engines, rockets as well. I was in semiconductor, did a lot of stuff there, building mechanics, oil and gas, wind turbines, etc. But the key thing is that I have that knowledge about airflow that I can apply to different things. And the nice thing about it is physics, you can scale it up, or if you know how it works, the flow around the mountain can be the flow around the bee for some effects. And you can actually use that to learn. Now, what I love about that is like you can take something from one industry where it's common or it has a normal application or it needs to actually happen, and you put it in an industry where nobody knows about it. And all of a sudden you can disrupt it in a good sense. You can open up a whole new path. My background, my father used to build clean rooms. He had a company, like an industrial company, making like device, like these big booths. Like think of it as like in this big like room here, there would be like spray booths and prep stations to, for example, do aircraft parts. I joined. I was 3 years old. I was already with like a little scooter between the welding stations and stuff. This was like, the mid 80s. I was like, oh, what's going on? So I learned how to build stuff. But I joined the maintenance crew and they had this booth and it was a downdraft laminar booth. What does that mean? The whole ceiling is porous. The entire ceiling of the whole area is like a huge booth, but the whole ceiling is porous and there's a flow that goes down this speed. That means that the airflow, every like 6 to 8 seconds, the entire volume of the booth gets refreshed. It's much quicker than in a building. And the flow doesn't have these whirls. It's just straight down next to each other. What does that do? Say you want to paint this blue and this thing red, and they're about a foot apart. Normally, if you would spray with a spray can, it would go also over on there. Now, you can just get the paint here red and here blue, and it wouldn't mix. As a matter of fact, if you have a cigarette in that booth, and I saw that with one of the maintenance guy, I'm not smoking, but one of these guys, he was like, I'm done with this filter chain. Let me just put up a cigarette. He stood right next to me. And there's the smoke, instead of a plume, it's like a line going down right next to you, as if it's like a stick in the air. Yeah. And I could look at it. I could see it. Like, and there's nothing, you can't smell it. It's just the smoke stayed contained. Now, in the pandemic, COVID, I was here in New York City. And indoors, because of that mixing, what I just talked about, COVID could spread much easier indoors than outdoors, because like it could linger and stay in the room and mix it with everything. And so people
Yeah.
10 minutes later could catch COVID from somebody who already left the room, which is like completely freaky and weird. And we only started learning
Gotcha.
about that during the pandemic, right?
Yeah.
My thing was like, what if we built those clean rooms, those porous ceiling clean rooms inside restaurants and bars? Then we don't have that problem. So I started doing that. I started building a portable version of what I learned could be a clean room. So like a huge fan, a lot of airflow, and then a kind of stabilizing controlled device that creates a downdraft. Now that we placed into bars, restaurant, it's again, the trickiest thing was in the time to understand, like to teach this to people in the bars and restaurants. Like, no, this is how it works. I can measure it. And
Right.
so during COVID, we got some traction with dentists and with clinics because the dentists, they always work with their mouths and there's a lot of spit and goo coming up. So they already know how dirty it is in, working with particles every day. Now post-COVID, the larger the area, the larger the machine, the more difficult and expensive it is. So I was like, okay, where can we help people? And where do people not move so much? So for a third of your life, you're moving between the left side of your pillow and the right side of your pillow. Depends on what kind of sleeper you are, of course, but you're not moving around the whole room. So now
Right.
I can create a local zone much easier right where you sleep. So that's where the Headboard came in. We're like, okay, we need something that is a controlled kind of lens effect near your upper body. And while you sleep, it's the perfect environment. And now a lot of people in this industry already work with mattresses or with the whole room or with sensors. Nobody was working on the headboard. So here we are.
No, and again, everything that you said is amazing. I've kind of dealt with, like you said, mattresses and kind of different, whether it's kind of flow zones or kind of heated mattresses, whatever the case may be. This is a patent attorney and kind of drafting filing patents for that. But you don't see too much work going on the headboard, which is still a big part of it. Of the bed. I love the fact that you had talked about how you kind of took this principle that you've obviously got from just kind of your studies, and all of a sudden you're applying that to different things, dentist office, whatever the case may be. And then from a business standpoint, you're saying, okay, what can I get the biggest bang for my buck? And it seemed like you landed on a headboard. Hey, look, that almost took me back. So my background is mechanical engineering. That kind of took me back to my fluids class, fluid dynamics, where we had that kind of test lab, and we had those kind of rooms that you go in with the flow in. You're kind of measuring different flow up in laminar regions, or kind of to a lesser extent turbulent regions of kind of different, I don't know, just kind of different projects or whatever the case that you were doing. So I guess with all that being said, at what point did you say, okay, you're saying that, hey, I have this headboard, or we're going to apply this principle and kind of what you've created to the headboards. At what point did you say, okay, this is, I think I have something here? Because it's one thing to say, okay, I want to have a business, I want to kind of sell headboards or apply this kind of principle and start making headboards and things like that. But at what point did you say, okay, man, I really have something here?
Yeah, it's a funny thing how it works. Like what I did is I built prototypes very quickly, very minimum square boxes and test things. They were bulky, they were loud, they were like long, they were this. But I started working with a couple of friends and family that have allergies and asthma, and just testing. Okay, what does it do to you? Like, man, so we placed like a very good friend of mine. He had like a very early prototype for like a year running it, and then he always had like this like closed up nose and woke up groggy and couldn't sleep. And all of a sudden, just no problem whatsoever anymore. The only thing when he got it back again was when he's French and he traveled to France, and he was like couldn't bring his headboard along, of course. So I was like, okay, so there's something here. And some people had measurement device like a Garmin watch or something like that, and I noticed like deeper sleep, more rest. There is also some scientific data about it. So like you don't have to like reinvent the wheel yourself. You can also like see what's already out there, right? So there's been studies about what the effect of air pollution are on kids or on people with certain conditions. Yeah. So then it's just about, okay, so can I do this? What does it do? Like a zone that's X clean, and then what's the effect? So you test it yourself, but you also use the data, and then you combine them. That was the really minimal side. And then the next step was, okay, will people buy it, or are they interested in it? And I got back to, I had a previous company and we ran a Kickstarter, and it was adjustable hearing protection. And it's like what was it? Like a $80, $50 to $80 product.
Yeah.
Now on Kickstarter, people can buy like, all right, I'll try it. Like, I'm not sure if I get the product. Like, let me just, try it. We started doing that Kickstarter on this headboard. It was like a $2,000 product with add-ons. It became $3,000. just to see if people, who would like that. And I'm so grateful of all these Kickstarter backers, but we got like 100 backers out of a product that was thousands of dollars. So that should completely be not in the realm of crowdfunding, like it's really not in that price range. So that made me think as well, like, hey, we got something here. And now we need to like build out the, basically the awareness of what it is and the trust that we can do it. So yeah.
No, and that's interesting because you kind of talked about the price with the Kickstarter. Obviously, they talked about it a little bit on Shark Tank. Did that kind of ever run you maybe away or maybe give you some pause for kind of doing it? Because again, you talked about the last business had the $50 to $80 product, which is okay. That's kind of nothing, especially these days. But then when you're talking about selling something, that's $2,000, $3,000. Maybe it's a little bit more kind of resistance for people buying it, even if it does work and they do need it. So did that kind of maybe at all change your kind of mindset on things, or kind of you had to kind of work around, or it was like, no, we're still going to kind of get this out to the people?
Yeah. So the thing is, what I notice is that you need to like approach it differently, right? Because indeed, if it's something that's a couple $1,000s, people are not just like, oh, take 5, whatever. I don't know about it. Like, what is it called? I'll try. Some people can do that.
Right.
Typically, they don't live on planet Earth. But everybody dies. But so the biggest challenge I have, and that's also why we started to build more headboards and use some of that investment money that we got to build trial headboards and send them to different people, send them to influencers, send them to doctors, send them to other companies that do measurements, and to see what we can do in collaborative sense. Now, because we're still a small company relatively, we cannot give everybody we can't send 1,000 headboards and see what comes back. So we need to also be smart in a way, like how can we reach people? How can we make sure that a lot of people see this? And who are the right people that say like, hey, I really want to try this, and then go with their community. So one thing that I noticed is that working closely with communities does help. So in New York City, there's a longevity community and a biohacking community about like, okay, what can you do to live better and live longer, etc. And I noticed that I got somebody here headboard. I showed it to him here in the lab, and he outright bought one. He's like, I love it. And then there was the next person in there, and the other one got referred. So it becomes this kind of kind of from the small. And I think that's one lesson I learned. It's like you can think all big and big, but you can also work from the small up. And you need to, of course, strategically look at the big picture. But
right.
I think that's where a lot of it is. Like people trust other people, and that's my game right now. Like, how do I get enough trust from people collectively to make this like a growing business to that level?
Oh, for sure. And I even love the marketing around it in terms of this kind of sanctuary or this kind of bubble, the sleep bubble. Let me ask you this, and maybe just kind of more of a technical question, and based on kind of the flow region being laminar as opposed to turbulent, you don't have this issue. I know sometimes if I'm kind of sleeping and it's hot and I sleep with the fan, then sometimes you may wake up with the sniffles. But is it because of the fact that it's in a kind of that laminar flow regime that you're not necessarily getting that getting maybe sick or whatever the case may be in a way that you would if you kind of slept with the fan blowing on you all night?
Yeah, so the problem with like if you have a fan blowing on you, first of all, a fan is turbulent air. It's like jets and whirls. So a fan will not, create a local clean zone. It will just send mixed air towards you. It's like as you roughly stir coffee and then throw the milk with coffee at you. It's still you get no black, no white, you get brown towards you. Right. So what we do, the second thing with that is that if you have a fan that blows very quickly, it can like really create a draft and actually make you sick because you get too cold, you're in a like draft. The nice thing about this is, and that's the nice thing about the laminar flow, because we have such a large area, but the flow itself without the whirls is very slow. It's about half a foot a second, so about this speed. It means that you don't feel it. It's below a certain draft limit, which is temperature dependent. So typically you won't feel the flow. If you're sweating because you're too hot, it will cool you down because it will take away the moisture. But if you're not sweating, you don't feel it. And that's the nice thing. It's like self-regulating. So it's like below a certain draft. That's what Kevin O'Leary also said when he was on the bed. It's like, hey, I don't feel, this kind of like, uncomfortable feeling.
Right, which is good.
Which is really good. Yeah, so that's a side effect of the physics of making it laminar and actually using a large plug of slow flow. Maybe from your mechanical engineering background as well. In airplanes, you used to have just jet engines, like low bypass or no bypass jet engine, which is like a very high speed core to push an airplane forward. Now we got these very big fans that push less speed, but over a larger area. And that's way more efficient. So same thing. Instead of pushing hard over a small area, we're pushing slow over a large area.
Larger area. I like that. And again, I've actually done some pan work on in that kind of jet engine, that airplane field, which is has been kind of pretty cool, and kind of you learn a lot. So let me ask you this, because I was talking about this to a buddy. It seems like nowadays things are completely different. Where back then, or kind of back in the day, maybe 90s, 2000s, maybe even 80s, when you were an entrepreneur, you did that when everything else failed, in terms of you couldn't get right for whatever reason, and all of a sudden you say, okay, I'm gonna just start a business, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. It's like this very taboo thing. But these days, you see it more and more, where now being an entrepreneur, I don't want to say it's a cool thing to do, but a lot of people are going that route, even though they may be, such as yourself, professionals. Again, aerospace engineer, PhD, aeroacoustics, but then to say, okay, I have this kind of professional kind of field, but I'm going to kind of leave that and do my own thing with a startup company. So how did you come to that decision? Was it a tough one? Because again, it seems like that's why everybody say go to school, get a good degree, and get a good job and kind of ride it out, what you have done. But then you try to put a pause on that to say, okay, I'm gonna do something else from an entrepreneurship lane with your company, AirTulip. And then it seems like you had another company that you had at some point. Were you always entrepreneurial mindset? I know you talked about the family business, or how did that come into play in terms of you and kind of wanting to start businesses and kind of really maybe leaving maybe your career, your day job, so to speak, to kind of work for yourself?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's like, I think it's an emotional thing to that sense, because logically I could have I'm like a PhD expert and I know everything in semiconductor. I could have had a cushy job for a long time, and I was a consultant. And at certain points I could stay at these places, just writing documentation, doing minor improvements. But it's definitely a harder route to do the startup thing. And definitely would be like, it's not about, oh no, then I'll make more money. That it's not about the money. It's about what you want to do. For me, it's like I can leverage much more what I learned to help other people if I do it this way, if I kind of break and create something new. I must say it's an emotional roller coaster, because it's not only engineering. Like, I can build thing, and I know production, I know design, and like all kinds of complicated things. I've dabbled in the patents as a consultant with all the semiconductor. Like I got like all kinds of different patents where I'm of course part of the business. I'm not.
Yeah, nice.
I'm the inventor, not the owner.
Yeah, you assign it to the company that you're working for at that point.
Yep. And you get like a thank you on that. But you know what? It's like if you make it better. So for me, I was already excited inside big cool businesses to make something work. And for example, working with ASML and semiconductor to kind of like get the latest technology for microchips. I actually worked on the EUV technology and to enable that to a certain extent. And that was exciting. But there's only so much you can do inside a large corporation. So I definitely wouldn't say it's a logical choice. It's not like the most safe way to money. It's actually opposite. And it's emotionally a roller coaster, but it's very much worth it if you want to go for it. One other thing I could say is I'm Dutch. I come from Europe.
I was going to bring that up. Yeah.
Yep. AirTulip. Tulips are flowered. Now, what I noticed is and of course I came from an entrepreneurial family, but still in Europe, it's harder to go do something really out of the ordinary. I think both on the investor side and on, what you're supposed to do. It's still more the mentality of like, hey, don't fail or you make it perfect. Whereas here in the States, and that's one thing that I love about America, it's like, go for it. If you think you can do it, go run. And people also appreciate it if you can make it work. It's not like, oh no, he's got that now and I want it too. No, it's like, good for you. Let's do it. Let's do more. People take energy from success of others. And that's one key aspect of what I love about this country. And that's why I'm here.
And that's amazing, because my question to that, you being Dutch, was, does that give you an advantage? You hear about the immigrants that come over, and next thing you know, they're just kind of outwork kind of the natural born citizens. But it seems like you're saying not only that, which it seems like you have a chip on your shoulder and understanding an opportunity, but also in those other countries, say in Europe, for example, it's tougher to kind of go against the grain. Whereas America, you can kind of drop everything and kind of start a business like that. And to the extent that you can kind of find a audience for it, then you're good to go. But it seems like that's not the case in Europe, where, and I have heard that to a lesser extent, as far as, hey, if you are smart, you're going to go to university. If you are not smart, you're probably going to go do something else. But this whole thing of you starting a business, creating a business, then kind of getting rich as an entrepreneur in other countries is maybe not as much of a thing as it is here in the US.
No, you need to know how it works and observe the right connections, but it's like it's less risk aversity here in general. I mean,
Yeah.
nothing wrong with Holland. I love the country. Everything is all nice and stuff like that. But if you really want to go and shine, it's harder to do it.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I always will be very much adamant about it's so nice to be in Holland. I love to go back there, and I speak Dutch to my kid, 6 months old now. So we're gonna do all the languages and stuff. So world citizen, but yeah, it's got something special here. And that's the thing. It's like the opportunity to just make it work. And it's not out of necessity that I'm here. It's like, I could have stayed there. I could have stayed in Asia. But I like it here. So let's make it work. And with that also create that shining spark that a lot of people, people that work on your team or people that you help or people that come on board. I love it. You get this energy. People are like, let's go. So yeah.
Yep, no, for sure. So then I want to get off into IP because I always kind of like to ask a guest. And again, you're in a different just kind of category altogether based on your background as an aerospace engineer. And again, you talked about kind of having patents with the company that you work with on kind of semiconductor and things like that. I know a lot of people they're kind of coming into IP for the first time when they're starting a business. This is not something that obviously, unless you're an engineer and you have patents, it's not something that you kind of had to deal with prior or previously, but now you having a business, you're creating a product, whatever the case may be, you have to kind of deal with the IP a lot more, whether it's trademarks, whether it's patents, whatever the case may be. But it seems like you have already kind of understood that and kind of knew about IP, just kind of based on your what you're doing previously. Is that correct?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that helps, but I'm glad actually I'm talking to you about helping people understand the landscape. So a couple of things that I think people get, it's not all of a sudden you just admit something and then it's patented. As a matter of fact, it's sometimes actually better to not, accelerate that, to kind of go through different stages. So, and there's different ways you can work with your attorneys and different ways to get started. So I think one of the key things that I noticed in the US, at least, that is, different from at least European patent law is the provisional stage. So where you can actually write down your ideas, and you might have some thoughts about it. I'd love to spar with you on that. Yeah. Just putting down on paper what you're doing, describing it. And the key thing is as well, you don't have to draft the claims. It's about the description of it. And of course, claims can be beneficial, but you can already set something and it doesn't cost much to put a provisional down to then test for a year. Hey, is this worth it to kind of pursue? So I think, again, it's a lower barrier to entry into that whole IP set if you go that route. That said, I'm sure you might have some comments about it too, but
I would probably agree with you. I mean, again, I've any big country, I've probably prosecuted patents in, whether it's Japan, whether it's China, different countries in Europe, India, Taiwan. So I've kind of worked with foreign associates in these different countries and kind of dealt with the patent office. And like you said, this provisional patent application process is unique seems to be unique to the U.S. I don't recall. I don't think Europe and some of these other countries have that process. You have to have it kind of essentially buttoned up when you file for your protection in that country. And provisional, as you mentioned, you don't have to have it buttoned up as much. You can, as long as you describe it and maybe include the drawings, then you can just file it. And again, you don't. It's less cost. Now, I will say, with a lot of people maybe kind of get it misconstrued, is your provisional patent application is only as good as the content in there. So
yes.
Again, if you don't have all the nuts and bolts in there, then that's not going to be afforded that earlier filing date. Now, so obviously, if you go to convert it from a provisional to a utility patent within that year time frame, then to the extent that you kind of add more to the patent application, you want to make sure that earlier file provisional application has a sufficient number of drawings to the extent that it's some type of mechanical or kind of physical thing, just because you don't want to kind of later down the line and say, okay, this stuff that you added later on in your utility application was not supported by the provisional and therefore did not get that earlier filing date. So that's the only thing I would say. But yeah, the provisional patent application process, especially for a startup company, is a great way to be able to kind of push off costs while you're kind of dealing with inventors or trying to boost your sales or things like that. I know a lot of times with these big companies, the Ford Motor companies, the Apples, the Microsoft, they have multi-million dollar R&D budget. So typically they just file the utilities from the start. But for a startup company, yeah, absolutely take advantage of that provisional patent application process, and especially since it's kind of it's informal compared to the utility process, but it's also a little cheaper compared to the utility process. So I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I think it's still good to, if you don't know how to do it, to get advice from a lawyer or like people like you to kind of know how to do it. I'm sorry if I'm dropping out here for a second. So the other thing that I think, so the big company, so for example, inside semiconductor company ASML. So there was this formalized process of, if you have an idea to make a solution, write it down, get it to the legal department. And indeed, they go straight to non-provisional, straight to PCT, and they write it up. So I got multiple patents where I'm the inventor or co-inventor on, because it's a continuous stream. So like also with these Philips or other companies, it's not one patent. And I think that's also one thing that is, people that have a misconception. It's not like I have a patent and that's it. Like it typically doesn't work that way. It's multiple sticks in the ground to cover a field to make sure that you have IP protection around it. So for example, with AirTulip, like what I saw with ASML, we didn't file for just one patent application. We did multiple. So I got multiple now in PCT stage. They're public now with favorable like novelty reports, other provisional. So you keep feeding the animal. Why? It's not about, like just this one thing and you cover the field. Nowadays, it's also, there's a lot of nuance to it. And I think that's what people forget. And I think as you're serious and as you're growing, don't forget about that IP stage. Keep feeding that and keep putting that in. Of course, only when it makes sense from a business perspective, right? You're growing, you're going, and you keep your R&D up and you keep filing into it. So that's one.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, absolutely. I agree with everything that you just said. And you kind of look at it as just kind of really building your moat around kind of your product. And that will help kind of defend others off, because, as you know, once you're successful, other people are going to try to copy it. Other people, companies, competitors are going to try to come in and, try to take market share away from you. But if you have some good IP, good patents or whatever the case may be with good claim scope, then that can really help you as far as kind of fending off the competitors and kind of really continue to kind of take advantage from an economic standpoint. So I definitely agree with that. And I know a lot of times the USPTO or whatever patent office you're dealing with, sometimes they make you kind of file multiple patents, where even though I'm actually in a process, I'm filing a patent application here, and it's probably going to be a number of utility matters that come out of it, in terms of it's going to be a number of patents that come out of it. It's not going to be just one. We're probably going to have 2 or 3 patents that come out of it. You have a design patent, which I'm pretty sure maybe you're in the process of doing with your product as well. So it's a lot that can come out of that application or that invention, such that you're protected in a number of ways. So I definitely agree with everything that you just said there, for sure.
It's also funny maybe to note, like coming from internal, like from large companies, some of the patents there for those companies, it's not only about the machine they're making, it's also the cover of what they're not making. So for example, they have a certain way to make the UV light, and then there's other ways or thoughts. You still want to file that because they want to have a portfolio to make sure that other companies don't say, hey, we can do it some other way, or maybe exchange some licensing with other larger companies down the road. Like that's also a very key thing. I find it fascinating how that works, and how the notion of patents is both important, like for entrepreneurs and startups and for large companies, but they're almost like used differently to a certain extent.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. A startup company, it's definitely used differently. To your point, maybe a licensing opportunity, maybe kind of to build the moat. But I know some just kind of working in the automotive space for 10 years. A lot of the automotive companies, they're not necessarily suing each other. However, you have this, it's like kind of mutually assured destruction, because you have all this IP, these patents. To the extent somebody wants to go to war with you or decides to pick on you, they're probably kind of infringing some of your patents. So it's like, okay, they're using it from a defensive measure, not that they want to go out and sue people for patent infringement. But it's almost like, hey, if you kind of want to come pick on us, it's something within all these patents that we have that I'm sure that you're infringing. So we can go there if you want to. So it's almost to kind of not get messed with, which is a kind of a different way to think about it. But a lot of large companies do that, particularly in the automotive space. So then kind of makes
like Niels on the porcupine. Like how many you have?
All right. So then moving on, at what point did you say, okay, man, I need to take this thing to Shark Tank and really kind of blow this thing up or take it to the next level? I know sometimes just from the guests I've interviewed, sometimes the producers or the people at Shark Tank kind of reach out to them. Other times, the guests may apply to Shark Tank 2, 3, 4 times before they finally kind of break through and get a chance to get on the show. So what was your experience like to say, okay, number one, hey, I have to go on Shark Tank, and then number two, just kind of going through that application process?
Yeah, no, cool. It started off with, you saw Jim, the guy in the tank. He's a really good friend, former consultant in automotive. And he was like, he's a great fan of the show. He loves it. So he's like, called me up. And this is the serendipity of life. He's like, Arjen, you should go on Shark Tank. I was like, okay, cool. Sure, let's do it. Like, why not? Like, a lot of people, like, you can always say, like, yeah, no, but just go, like, try it. Now, of course, looking around, you can submit to the website or stuff, but then you're point of the pile. So they had these open days. And one of the open days that was coming up back then was in the Javits Center in New York. So you can go there, you can line up early in the morning and, do your kind of pitch. It's like a pre-day. It was part of some other event. So I had like foam boards with like, the smoke kind of color thing. And I stood there like in line with a lot of people with all kinds of different ideas at 6 a.m. there, just lining up outside of this big conference center. And, it took forever. Because so many people. And from around 2 p.m., I was talking to somebody there. So you get through a process, you get to do your pitch. They, select a next round. And then you start working with some directors on your pitch to kind of see, like, siphon it off. You need to do some more videos. And there's a couple of rounds you go through. Yeah. So there's a whole process to kind of figure out that, hey, do you have the, TV stands? Is your idea cool? Do you have everything right in terms of the ask? And as you go further along, there's of course legal things and contract, because it's a large production. It's massive. It's fun though to go through it. It's of course also exciting. Like, are you going to go to the next round or not? And it's like this whole roller coaster. Again, emotions. But then at the end, I was like, okay, I wanna build this whole enclosure thing. So one of the things was that as we went to the studio, normally the crew, there's a big crew and they're all very tight knit. They're beautiful people, by the way. Awesome. It's like a really nice community there within the Sony studios. But normally they would help set up the tables and dress up the things, except for if you have something like, bulky and unwielding. So what we had, so we created in this big, glass enclosure, and I made, the electronics, everything I make myself. There's a little remote control to make sure it works. But I was already there the days before setting it up. And so it was really nice to do my kind of, they have like a pre-recording, see if everything is okay. And, I was good. And I was there in person, and other people come in Zoom or something. But, it was really cool to already be there. So that made me a little calmer, and at the end you see the studio already, and, you're not coming in there just an hour before. So that was fun. But of course there was a little bit of for me, like a little scared, because it was a very much a prototype board, and this remote control, there was like lots of interference, studio lights. So the day before, the thing glitched. It didn't want to do the smoke at the right time. I was like, oh no. So I was like trying to figure out through the mic, like, what's going on? Some code that wasn't right. Luckily, on the day, it worked out. I had the little thing, let's do Jim, and worked it all out and looked beautiful, and it was an awesome TV moment. And I love that kind of dramatic effect, but also because it's real, it's physics. There's no trickery in it. It's actually smoke in the room. It's like, I don't do video editing here. I just that's it. This is what's happening.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah. Oh, it was a intense, fun, huge project. I would say people go for it, because it's it is also helping you shape, your messaging, because you have to think about it and see how it is on TV. And for me, it was the investment for the Sharks, with the right terms, but also getting the awareness, like, getting the broadcast presence, because I know this helps people. How do I reach people? How can I get to people? And this was one of the things, like with visual, aid. And, I also had the particle counter. It wasn't in the cut, but this also helped me, like, get my story straight to the people and reach out. And off that, of course, there's a lot of, you get a lot of website traffic, and people reach out to you, and collaborations. There's all kinds of stuff happening. It's quite an animal. So yeah.
No, I was going to say, it seems like, definitely just having that kind of Shark Tank stamp on things kind of really takes things to the next level. And it seems like, again, to your point about, hey, it seems like Mr. Wonderful, maybe made an offer, but it was a little higher than what you wanted. So you kind of stuck to your guns and said, okay, I'm gonna respectfully decline and kind of thanks for the opportunity. But I guess another thing that I always kind of like when I kind of do those reaction videos is number one, it seems like the sharks definitely give some great advice, just on different things that maybe the business owners may not have been thinking about. I think it was Mark who had talked about kind of baby cribs. Someone talked about baby cribs, and I thought that was really fascinating, and I thought was a good maybe way to go. Have you kind of considered that more so to say, okay, just integrate this thing into like kind of baby cribs, whatever the case may be, as opposed to like kind of headboard for for bigger kids or adults?
Yeah, so actually, we already tested this with some of the product prototypes. We have a paper out from the University of Eindhoven where a PhD student was looking in daycare centers. They have these little crib alcoves for daycare, and we provided them one of these units, but just tailored for babies. And that was by far the best in terms of creating a good air quality. So we're already on it. The biggest thing for me is now to figure out, okay, where do I focus on now? Like, because we can go down the baby crib road, I need to understand that field, have the right people work with me. So if anybody like is from that industry or is interested in it, please reach out to me, like would say. But yeah, it really resonated with me to see that from Mark Cuban. And I think we really, both on the medical and the baby crib thing, I think there's something there. It's a shame, like he said, like, my marketing was quite right or the fit, so he was out, but I would have loved him also on board. That said, also, same thing, like, I really appreciated Kevin for, jumping on it and getting it and testing it and going for it. I think he was such a champion. But yeah, I learned from all the sharks and their reactions, and I'm trying to take that to the next step. This is real human thing. Like it's not scripted. That's also one thing, they really react to you on the spot. They haven't seen you before. Like, go.
No, for sure. No, I definitely, definitely from kind of what I've known and heard is it's the real deal. Maybe that initial kind of 2-minute pitch or spiel is maybe scripted, but other than that, it's an hour of just kind of you fielding questions and kind of answering questions and kind of, I guess, creating this moment, which, some of it makes it on TV, some of it doesn't. And, but again, it seemed like nonetheless, it definitely kind of broadcasts you out to millions of people who kind of watch the show and kind of watch the show from the beginning. So then I guess let me ask you this here. What was, because we all know kind of business is not, you talked about it, you have the roller coaster ride. Sign is like a sine wave. It's no just kind of linear progression. You have the ups and the downs of it all. What would you say up until this point in time, maybe was your biggest breakthrough with the business AirTulip? And then on the flip side of that, what would you say was your biggest challenge that you had to overcome?
Right. I think the biggest breakthrough was actually pivoting to the headboard and noticing that there's a different market post-COVID, because initially the business was always about like, okay, I wanted to help during the COVID era. So it started off that way. And so getting it into a product that would be having a lasting effect was a big thing for me. And I think my biggest challenge is like getting the right people on board and working with the right people. It's really hard. I'm an engineer. I always will be a product guy. I mean, I'm the CEO and I have to do all the different hats, but I have to learn also not only to do the marketing, but also to know who's good at, for example, or, customer service or sales. And that's for me the biggest challenge. And I think I'm still working through that. Like, how do you set up a system where people are happy, things are moving, but it's not fluff. It's like, go, you need to actually make it work. And there's a mission to it. That's my biggest challenge. It's ongoing. It's not a product. It's like the organization of people.
No, and that's a great point, because I was talked to I think Brittany Rowe, who she had the Hella Awkward game. She was on Shark Tank, and kind of she talked about it. So it's her. She's like the CEO or more or less the face, but she has her brother and her kind of sister-in-law as kind of part of the company as well. And she talked about how maybe overwhelming it'll be to try to go at everything kind of by yourself as a solopreneur or solo founder, as opposed to having kind of people that you're bringing on board to kind of balance out your skill sets. You talked about you're a product guy, engineer by trade. So and obviously that part of it is easy with the product for you. But when you're trying to have to kind of do the hiring, for example, HR, or you're dealing with the marketing, that something that's out of your wheelhouse. Yep, you still have to have marketing and kind of have to be in compliance with HR so that, everything is kind of on an up and up. So I guess what's the best way that you have kind of dealt with it up until this point in time? Because I think that's definitely something that others can take away from it, as far as just kind of going at this thing alone, but having to kind of build this team that kind of complements your skill set, but also kind of pushes the ship forward, or helps you move the ship forward.
Yeah, I think it's the same thing as with product. It's like, get out of the cave, Like people can tinker, for example, on products forever and never actually get it to market. At a certain point, you're like, it's not perfect, let's go. And then, same thing with Shark Tank, like get on TV, okay, do it. Uh, and I think the same thing with people is get out there, ask people around in your network, like, hey, do you know anybody, or can I ask others? Find other founders, you might be surprised how much people actually are open just to talk to you, even if they're famous or successful something or through something. Just be there and genuinely ask. You learn a lot. And if you're out there asking about that, like, hey, I need to know how marketing is, can somebody help me, or how to get the right people, does know anybody know what that way you get a lot more that you don't know. I think the biggest thing is, the biggest challenge everybody has, you don't know what you don't know. There's things you think you don't know, but then there's the things you don't know that you don't know, which is a blind spot. You're like, I can't do this, but you forget there's a whole room there with other people and things that you never realized. And with that, you enable the serendipity of life that I really love. I, met so many great friends and people, but just random-ish encounters that you never would have planned beforehand. Yep. But you end up in them and you work with them in the moment. So I would say, yeah, for people, get out there, start talking to others, and start, reaching out through your network, or make your network. Or if you think some people are really good about, that would help your business forward, just send them a message, no matter what. It's, you can meet them. And that's, I think, everybody's human, right? So even if people are famous or something, if you come back with the right thing, like, just, we're all human beings. So you might be surprised.
No, I like that. And I think that's a great segue into the next question for you. I have two more questions, and I'll be respectful of your time and kind of get you up out of here. But I guess, what advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs? I know you talked about maybe reaching out to people and just putting yourself out there. But for someone who's maybe, they have an idea, they have a product, they maybe have a service, and they're looking to kind of go into it, be an entrepreneur, but for whatever reason, they're kind of they're hesitant for whatever reason. So what advice would you give to that aspiring entrepreneur?
I think it's important to understand your motivation. I see a lot of people that say, like, oh, I'm in trouble and I need this to get out of it, and then only them. And that's not a business. That's a sort of kind of a fairy tale, right? It's a story that would help them, but it's very tricky because people don't get how hard it is to actually get the right traction, to get the right things. Most business fail. So be prepared for that. And not saying don't do it, but just have the right motivation in there. If it's just for you to kind of like, this, if it would be easy for me to have this, it might be better to do something else. But then that said, if you have the right mindset, you're like, hey, I really got something, I want to bite into this. Find the right people around you, find the right team early on, talk to also investors. I think one of the things that in hindsight I would have done differently is that I put in a lot of my own money.
I was going to say, you put in, yeah.
But in hindsight, like, I learned a lot from my angels and my VCs. There's a lot of good advice you get as well. If you get the right ones, you get the warm people that, start introducing you to people, or, these are not just cold people. They often have a network themselves. They often have some ideas that might resonate with you. That helps. So set up your system early, I'd say, and do that before, you don't have to spend a lot to do this. Think about, for a product side, what's your minimum to get some data to then talk to somebody to get the money in. Don't build the thing from scratch all the way through. Really don't. Like, get some key things in there, like the engineering side of my work, if it's hardware or some kind of minimum code or some kind of survey. And this is like textbook, of course, startup stuff. But even though I know it's textbook, I learned it the hard way every single time. I'm like, damn it, I should have done it this way. So yeah, no, I went from one to the other, but I think in hindsight, I would have gone earlier, more community, and work with investors.
Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool. And then I guess the last question, and maybe the most important, how can people follow you? How can people go purchase the product?
Yeah. So our website is airtulip.co.com. And also, we're on Instagram and all the other channels, like at AirTulip. There's a lot of details on the site, but we're also very available to have a chat with you if there's any questions, or if you want to have some custom headboards or something, or want to know more. We're very open. So there's an email there, there's a chat box. Reach us and talk to us. So I would say airtulip.co.
Nice. And one of the, I guess the silver linings, I know a lot of times with the whole copycat thing, you don't typically have that when a barrier entry is a little bit more. I mean, obviously with a product that's a little bit more expensive, that has a little bit more parts going parts included, it seems like you wouldn't have to worry about the knockoffs as much as someone who maybe have, just a 10, 15, $20 product that's easy to manufacture. Seems like that's where the kind of the knockoff really kind of unfortunately affects those businesses. But it seems like in your case, with your product, you're probably a little bit more on the safe side from that.
Yeah. First of all, yes, in order to make it right, there's a lot of stuff and a lot of IP at different aspects of the board, like to make it silent, to make the flow this way. There's a lot of, ground we cover. And what I noticed is the more ground you cover, the harder it is to immediately copy paste. Yeah. And if they copy paste, there was this like very nice copycat. There was like, I think it was a Honda engine or something, it was a Japanese engine design. And I think it was in China that they made exactly the same design, but they made it out of a much more brittle material because they didn't think about the material with the design. So the thing didn't work. It cracked and it broke. So a lot of times when something is complex or it has different interactions, it takes a step of thinking in order to copy it or do something new. So that helps. That said, I also noticed that over the years, if people start doing something or start copying it, it's not necessarily bad. It means there's a market. You just need to make sure you stay on it, both on the IP side or on the trade secret side or what you're doing, and work with that. Because there's actually a good aspect to it. Like if others are doing, there most probably is money to be made here. So have a look. That's one thing I would say.
No, for sure. And I unfortunately I look at it as almost like a badge of honor. Like you said, once you somebody starts to copy your product, and that, like you said, it means it's definitely a market for it, and clearly it's money to be made, which is kind of what you want to hear and what you want to see. So hopefully, audience, you guys enjoyed this one. A lot of jewels being dropped, a lot of kind of good info being told, especially on the IP front, but also just from a business standpoint and kind of just maybe steps to go about forming a business, hiring the right team, not maybe using as much of your money early on. It was a lot of good kind of nuggets said in this interview. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this one, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Take care.